He learned about feminism from a woman who cuckolded his father. That's what he says. Actually, he learned about feminism from the indoctrination from the public school and from the universities he went to. Gender-based balanced cabinet, that violates the idea that we should have really the best people in the most important roles, right? We didn't get it. We didn't get that. Is there someone's... Oh, yeah, Catherine McKenna. So I'll just name her. She lost track. She became business and development minister after she lost the environment file. She lost track of 20,000 projects. The idea is we're going to stimulate the economy. That was Justin Trudeau's idea, to stimulate an already healthy economy. Sorry. Which goes against every economic principle. When the economy's doing good, you save a little so that you've got some to pay out when the economy suffers, right? It's common sense, and it's been settled for years. So what he did is he said he had borrowed 10, ended up borrowing 30 when the economy was good. And I do believe this is before COVID. I think that before COVID, she had lost track of 20,000 different projects that they funded. Before COVID. They never funded the Attorney General properly. The Auditor General, I should say. They've got all this money to spend. They don't have it to pay the Auditor General to oversee the way that they're spending money. This is unforgivable. That is unforgivable. Disqualifies you from being the Prime Minister of the country, just flat out. Absolutely forget it. The India trip, for 4 or 5 days he danced around like that. And he brought along a Sikh terrorist, and Hindus are never going to forget that. So now Canada has a problem with Hindus that have a problem with Sikh separatists. Did we want that? I didn't want a problem with Hindu nationalists. We got one now. He admitted to an ongoing genocide of Aboriginal people, and that was under pressure from the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Inquiry. I think that he probably hired the people who did that, right? And that was a fiasco. I saw a little while ago someone say that it was there's so much crap in media now. I mean, it's extraordinary. But they said, okay, maybe, getting people to relive their trauma from the past makes them depressed. Okay, we need a scientific study to tell us that. Missing and murdered Indigenous. So I think Aboriginal women were saying, yeah, you just re-traumatized, didn't accomplish anything. The whole thing was ridiculous. There's more missing and murdered Indigenous boys. We know who kills Aboriginal women. It's Aboriginal men and Aboriginal women, for the most part. There's a trail of tears and all that. The problem with Whitey is that when he goes bad big time. That's a serious problem for us. For us Whiteys. Whiteys are a kind of an identity group now, because we've been forced to become one. You can't constantly rag on a group of people and then expect them not to take on an identity as people who are being ragged on all the time. You're forcing it. You're forcing what you'd call fascism. What you'd call Nazism specifically. It's really worth going through the other videos that I made today about the similarities between woke politics and Nazi philosophy. There's a lot of parallels. It's absolutely distinct in some ways. Okay, here's the thing: is that I called it. I call them woke fascists. That's not what they are. They're not woke fascists. They're fascist wokies. The noun that the adjective describes is the primary characteristic, and the adjective describes that. I'm not going to call them Nazis because obviously they weren't Nazis, but they were fascist. They are fascistic wokies. The similarities are as significant as the differences. Propagandistic, socialistic, anti-capitalist, willing to engage in political violence, etc. Those are major things. And of course, you know, the wokey category is fuzzy all over, you know. Nobody's going to be well described by, you're going to say that, okay, this guy's a wokie. Okay, does that mean that he's inclined to be socialist? Well, if he's not a wokie, is he? But that individual might have problems with some other element of woke politics. Yeah, I think, you know, for example, he might have a problem with the transgender ideology that's been put out in the Canadian educational system now for a few years. There's a lot of people, they're not okay with that. They just don't want their kids to be confused about their sex, right? Anyway, so at the end of the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls inquiry, he admitted to an ongoing genocide. If you're the president or the prime minister of a country that's engaged in an ongoing genocide, that means that you're liable. You should be tried at The Hague. I think it took them 20 years to convict that guy from the former Yugoslavia because he wouldn't admit it. Well, Trudeau admitted it. Cash for access, a known big-time Chinese Communist Party mobster among the donors. We know that. What did they pay? $1 million for a statue of Justin Trudeau's father or something? Of course, Justin Trudeau's not connected to the Trudeau Foundation or whatever it was. Kokanee Grope. Standards for thee, but not for me. We know this. Blackface. He said that as a result of his privileged education, he wasn't familiar with the way that blackface would be insulting to black people. Okay, sorry, Justin. That is definitely not true. If you're going to an elite educational school or teaching there, you're going to be made very well familiar with the idea that blackface is insulting to black people. You knew that. You just, that's just totally a lie. How many times have you visited the ethics commissioner or whatever it was? How many times? He does not answer questions. He borrowed $500 billion, printed probably as much, caused inflation, which is crushing lower income workers. Zero question about that. And the wealthy in Canada at the end of the COVID crisis came out more wealthy than they did at the beginning. So not only did he pump out money, he pumped it out to people who already had money. I think that something that you should understand about wokies is that it's very much a top-down thing. So Google and Facebook and Amazon and the Democratic Party and the Liberal Party and the elite people want to push this woke ideology. It's not coming from the bottom. If it was coming from the bottom, it would be multiracial. And it would be standing up for working people. You're going to impose inflation on an entire country, make the rich more wealthy, and say that you have any concern whatsoever for working class people. All you're concerned about is how much can you pay them for votes. That's their thing. He alienated Alberta, and so in the conversation between Jordan and Rex, one of the things that they said that should have been a discussion topic is the way that Alberta and the the prairie provinces were alienated. They're seriously thinking about leaving the country. His job is to keep the country together, and he alienated big time Albertans. We know that. He said that at one time, and this was part of his whole, it's not a question of whether or not Justin Trudeau loves Canada, because the question is ridiculous. That whole pathetic performance came out after he had said that if we went forward with Stephen Harper's ideals, then he would advocate that Quebec should leave Canada. So it's two separatist things that he was engaged in that way, different ways. I don't like the way that he did a little striptease and then said the country that he most admired was China. But I'll give him that he said that he admired them because their basic dictatorship allowed them to turn their economy around in response to global warming. Okay, I'll give him that whole thing. Yeah, no, that's not a thing you do. You don't say that the thing that you admire most about a country is the basic dictatorship. Not in a democracy. I mean, he's a bit stupid. If, like, you look at Rex and Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson is an expert on IQ. They think he's stupid. Just to say that he has a lower IQ than me, right? He's got a higher IQ than I do, or that probably that most people do. He wasn't smart enough to be the Prime Minister of Canada. And he's too sensitive. He's too egotistical. Okay, so these aren't related at all. Okay, the next thing is that he was asked in English in Quebec by an old lady who wanted to know, oh my God, I can't receive medical services in Quebec because my French isn't good enough. She asked him the question in English, and he responded in French. And I don't think he apologized for that. An old lady wondering about how she's going to get medical care. The Sox. The Sox are pathetic. Took 300 people to the Paris Climate Change Conference. A lot of them had nothing to do with it. Just vacation. Piss up. We'll fly you there. Vote for us. We got all kinds of money to splash around. Violating freedom of expression, M103, C10, and C36. A lot of people, that's what their concern was. That's been what their concern with wokies has been for a long time, is that they limit freedom of expression. You need freedom of expression because the guy with the craziest ideas might be right. You need freedom of expression because you need to know what people are thinking. You don't want them to go underground. You need to give people freedom of expression because they don't have freedom of expression. You've violated the essence of their humanity in a sense. Freedom of expression is the core value. If you've got a government that is being criticized for being against freedom of expression, intelligent, knowledgeable people saying that, you've got a problem. He's pumped up fear of white supremacy. He listened to Theresa Tam. He said, okay, she's the expert, we'll listen to her. That's not your job as a prime minister. Your job as prime minister is to listen to a variety of experts and then make up your mind. She got it wrong about the lab leak hypothesis, and because of that, we trusted China too much, and because of that, we were late in responding to COVID, and that killed a lot of people. Okay, we're at 16. I do not like him.